Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Apologies that we had to start a bit later than our expected 5 p.m. Eastern start time. I got pulled into a great meeting with a guy you may know if you're a football fan here in the United States. The one and only JB, James Brown from CBS Sports, was here, and I got a chance to meet him. And what a thrill that was. He's a great broadcaster, and I'm a football fan. So that was fun. So that held me up a little bit. When you got a meeting with JB, I said, the audience will understand, our viewers understand. But look, we've got a lot to talk about. We're going from pleasantries and a nice meeting with a great guy who loves the Lord, by the way. James Brown is a super strong Christian. So a lot of fun to have him at our TBN headquarters here in Dallas-Fort Worth. But folks, listen, the situation in the north, obviously, we've been talking about it along the Israel-Lebanon border, out of control. There's no other way to put it, and spiraling towards a major war. There's no way to sugarcoat it. So now we have France, which has always had a pretty strong relationship with Lebanon, what they would call the Levant region, Lebanon, Syria. France trying to play a role here in what they say, alongside the Biden administration, surprise, surprise, in what they say is an attempt to de-escalate tensions with Israel. They call it basically a trilateral commission of sorts they're trying to put together, folks, with France, the U.S., and Israel. And here's the short of it. Israel saying, no way. Some tension right now between Israel and France. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant with a strong, I would say, rebuke of France, and essentially saying to Macron, Emmanuel Macron, and the French government, we're not working with you. You actually have been, and I'm being kind here, very unhelpful to us in our war with Hamas. Now, I'm going to read the direct quotes from Yoav Gallant, France's response. And by the way, the Israeli Foreign Ministry's response, folks, because remember, Yoav Gallant, member of the War Cabinet, he's the defense minister, but the Foreign Ministry is a different wing of the Israeli government. Now we have the Foreign Ministry and the Defense Ministry in Israel butting heads and publicly disagreeing over Israel's relationship with France. Now you might say, well, who cares? Big deal. Well, listen, it is a big deal because France is a Western European nation, a NATO member nation that is, although its policies and its public pronouncements don't always say as much, France is an ally of Israel. And when it's France alongside the United States, which is Israel's chief ally in the world, not overall, the God of Israel is Israel's greatest ally, of course, it's a big deal for Israel to have tensions with any Western nation. When I say tensions, I mean diplomatic tensions. Nothing more than that, but it is a big deal because France is an influential nation in the European Western Alliance, in NATO, in the European Union, and France has a lot of say in those bodies. So in a perfect world, especially during a time of war, where radical Islamic forces that seek not only the destruction of Israel, but also the destruction of France and the wider and Western world, by the way, we want everyone on the same page right now. And we want Israeli government branches, defense ministry, foreign ministry, getting along. There's a need for unity right now, a unified front against the Iranian front, the Iranian axis, the Iranian regime, the Assad regime in Syria, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, Erdogan in Turkey, who operates with that Iranian axis, but also operates independently and does his own thing. And either way is not good. He's up to no good. So there needs to be, in my view, folks, a united Western front. And just a quick aside here, bear with me for just a minute. I'm going to get more into what Yoav Gallant said to France, and it wasn't pretty, and France's response. But I have to mention the elections in Europe last weekend. Could that go a long way towards that united Western front that I believe we need? The free world needs to unite against the forces of tyranny. The gathering storm, as I've called it, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. By the way, as I come to you, 5:25 Eastern Time on Friday afternoon, June 14th, 2024, we have a Russian nuclear-armed submarine off the coast of the United States. and Russian warships docking in Cuba. So if you think the Gathering Storm Coalition, as I call it, is not on the march, think again. And why are they on the march? They smell weakness in Washington. They see a leadership vacuum. We've said it here many times. I'll say it again right now. Weak men create hard times. And right now, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they're the senior partners in the Gathering Storm Coalition. We have junior partners, Cuba, Venezuela, and we have a fledgling partner in Turkey, which is kind of straddling the fence. It's a NATO member nation, which has inquired about EU membership, and yet it's got a foot in the East, a foot in the Gathering Storm camp increasingly. And I believe a day is coming prophetically when Turkey will go all in and give itself over to that front entirely. And we'll talk more about that before we're done here today. But for me, wow, this is a time, folks, to me, that has many similarities to the 1930s and the run-up to World War II. Do you agree? By the way, please comment. We've got a very active chat here. Come on, comment. What do you think? Do you see echoes, my dear viewers, my very educated Watchman audience, do you see echoes here of the 1930s? The run-up to World War II? I certainly do. An axis of tyrannical nations aligning against the West? The rise of anti-Semitism at levels right now that we haven't seen since the 1930s, that we haven't seen since the Holocaust, right now in real time in 2024. And perhaps a changing of the guard. I mentioned a minute ago those European elections last weekend, the European parliamentary elections. Now, we discussed it here in the live stream this week. And by the way, quick reminder, if you miss any of our live streams, our Watchman Newscast, any of the content on this fast-growing channel, you can find it here in our archives. Just simply go on our homepage under Newscasts. It's all right there, everyone. But also, while you're there, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted, so you'll never miss an update. Folks, we're coming to you practically every day, sometimes even on the weekends, for such a time as this. So we'd love for you to subscribe and be with us here every day as watchmen and women on the wall. And the crazy thing is, just looking at the stats, the analytics, as they call them, with my team, would you believe the vast majority of regular viewers here on the channel is apparently not subscribed? I think it's 72% are not subscribed. That's crazy. Hey, when you subscribe, and it's completely free, you help us to get the video out more. The algorithms and all that stuff, how it works, I don't know, but I listen to my team and they're good. That's why we have nearly 1 million subscribers now on this channel. But YouTube will recommend the video around the world, and not for our glory, for God's glory, and to get the message out, folks. In a time of what seems to be universal deceit, we're bringing a message of biblical truth unapologetically. So we'd love if you could subscribe and help us out on that front. We do this not for our health. We do it to make a difference. And the more videos that get out there to the wider audience, the bigger difference we can make for the kingdom. So those European elections were consequential, right? We talked about this the other day, in that Germany, Olaf Scholz, leftist party, the chancellor, big losses. Macron in France, big losses. Belgium, the prime minister there actually resigned. And other countries like Italy, which have a right-wing majority, strengthen that majority. Right-wing parties, Netherlands, Geert Wilders, someone I've interviewed many times, right-wing parties in Western Europe made huge gains. It was a political earthquake in Europe. I say all that to say they will potentially change the face of Europe. They could, in that, look, these were European parliamentary elections. What's a European Parliament? It is the legislative arm of the EU, of the European Union, which has, folks, look, since its inception, what has the EU been? It's basically been a socialist, ultra-secular, bureaucratic superstate. Not good. That's been skeptical at best to the United States and outwardly hostile in a diplomatic sense to Israel. Could that change if we get right-wing coalitions that are pro-Israel, that are pro-family values, conservative, pro-God, imagine that in secular Europe. Could Europe flip? Or is it too far gone? Is the fact, and by the way, the key issue, I think the determining factor in those European elections was people are fed up with open borders. Hello. Europe has been inundated for decades now by immigrants from the Muslim world who have established enclaves throughout European cities, and many of whom, I'm sad to say, have not assimilated. And they have retained their native culture, which is inherently at odds with Western culture. And people in Europe are fed up. Indigenous Europeans are saying, you know what? This is crazy. It's changed the face of the continent. Enough is enough. We're voting out these parties and politicians who are open borders. Now, it may be too late, folks. Is it too far gone? Part of me says it's never too far gone. With Jesus, there's always hope, right? I'm a follower of Jesus. But it's, whoa, are they way down the road? But now is the light bulb going off? Are Europeans waking up? What do you think? Can Europe turn around? Could we have a strong, at just the moment we need it? I mean, right now it's needed more than ever, a unified front. At this moment in history, could this be the time that Europe flips? It can't be underestimated, I believe, that the European Parliament, and look, it'll still have a strong centrist kind of bent to it, but if there is a stronger right-wing presence, folks, that can't be underestimated. Because the EU Parliament, it sets the tone for the continent. They're making the laws. They're the legislative arm. I like to say we could use a man like Winston Churchill right now. He's turning in his grave as he sees what's become of the UK. And we had, a few weeks ago in Normandy, France, 80-year anniversary of D-Day. A lot of those World War II veterans, God bless them, who are still living, they say, look, this is not, speaking here as an American, and I'm sure European veterans will say the same thing. This is not the country I fought and bled to defend. We've gone off the rails. We've gone in the wrong direction. Folks, I'll leave you with this thought before we get into the France-Israel spat, which has ramifications, and a little more about the war in the north, a little bit more about the prophetic end. I'll leave you with this thought, that there are 3 major elections coming up, perhaps 4, in the next few months alone. Number 1, on July 4th, ironically enough, the day America declared its independence from Great Britain, the UK, will hold an election. Now, I'm not as optimistic about the Conservatives' chances there from what all early polls are saying. We have the Labour Party, Keir Starmer. We have Rishi Sunak, the incumbent from the Tories. Then we have Nigel Farage from the Reform Party, who's a very interesting guy who's very close to American conservatives. So I don't know. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the UK. It hasn't looked good for conservatives there, but anything can happen. That's a big one, right? The UK is a major, major player in the world. So that's July 4th. Obviously in November, I've heard there was a rumor there's some tiny election here in the United States, some guy Trump, but in all seriousness, it's going to be massive. We're 5 months out, and you and I both know it's going to be a tumultuous 5 months. Hang on to your hat. Who knows what's going to happen? But the UK, the United States, Canada, in, I believe, early 2025 or later this year, election as well. Justin Trudeau could be out the door. There's a great conservative candidate who was the main opposition there. His name is Pierre. Oh, gosh, his last name begins with a P. It escapes me right now, but I like what I've seen. Who knows? Maybe I'll interview him too. But I like what I've seen. So the U.S., U.K., Canada, all with elections coming up over the next 6 months or so, and then Israel. Benny Gantz just left the coalition last weekend. Will there be elections called in Israel? Will Israel be looking at? Basically, what I'm saying to you is this, folks. And we just had the European Parliament elections where there was major, upheaval. Is the fate? I mean, God controls the fate of nations. Let me just preface that by saying that. But the fate of the West hanging in the balance over the next few months, which way will these nations go? I can tell you, I truly believe, and again, God controls the fate of nations. But I can tell you that in the United States, there's a sense that if this election goes to the left once again, then it's going to be hard to dig out of the hole. I mean, we've dug ourselves, look, since 2018 for, 12 of the past 16 years here in the United States, we've been governed by radical leftists. There's no other way to say it. 8 years of Barack Obama, 4 years of Joe Biden, with 4 years of Trump sandwiched, 4 years of sanity sandwiched in between. But that's a long road, folks. 12 of the past 16 years governed by radical leftists. I mean, that's tough for a country to survive. If you go on to another 4 years and you're looking at 16 out of 20 years, practically 2 decades of radical left-wing governance, that's going to be a very, very, very deep hole to dig out of. So you could say in some ways the fate of the United States hangs in the balance in November. The stakes are high. And again, God raises leaders up. He knocks them down. God's in control. But there are some very consequential elections coming up right now. Do you realize the stakes? Folks, we're in Bible times. We're in prophetic times. And the chess pieces are rapidly moving on the board. And these elections are part of that in crucial countries, which are crucial to the future of the free world. So we're in the middle of it, folks. We're in the thick of it right now. Speaking of, Yoav Gallant, Emmanuel Macron of France. Now, I mentioned, well, I'll just read straight from my phone here. That's why I'm looking down. Pardon me, the Times of Israel and what they're saying. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said today that Israel is ruling out joining an initiative promoted by French President Emmanuel Macron, in which France, the United States, and Israel, the three nations together, would form a, quote, contact group to work on defusing the escalating tensions with Hezbollah on Israel's northern border. Now, obviously, the northern border is an absolute chaotic mess. We've talked about this practically every day for the past 2 weeks here in the newscast. A great northern war with prophetic overtones is coming. The question not if, but when, that Israel is going to be forced, it doesn't want to, it's going to be forced to tackle the Hezbollah problem head on. Today, Hezbollah launched dozens more. Today, Friday, June 14th, Hezbollah launched dozens more rockets, missiles, and attack drones at northern Israel. I read yesterday, folks, and this is really, something to wrap your head around. Over 10,000 acres of land in northern Israel have been burnt, have been scorched as a result of this Hezbollah onslaught. The rockets, the missiles, the drones, the explosive-laden drones are causing massive fires that are burning tens of thousands of acres of land across northern Israel. This is not sustainable for Israel. How long? How long can Israel, I don't want to say Israel's allowing it, because Israel has killed over 340 Hezbollah operatives since October 8th, when Hezbollah unilaterally opened fire on Israel and began these rocket bombardments. And Hezbollah has had several major commanders eliminated by Israel. The list goes on. So it's not like Israel's just standing back and taking it on the chin, but Israel certainly has held back from what it could unleash on Lebanon and Hezbollah. How long can you have at least 60,000 Israelis, 60,000, evacuated from their homes in the north, where there are virtual ghost towns near the Lebanon border? I've been there. I was there a few months ago. I was there in February. These were virtual ghost towns along the Israel-Lebanon border. How long? How long can Israel countenance that? When are the people going home? They're living out of suitcases in hotels. I know, because I stayed in a hotel with them in the Galilee back in February. They said, we don't know when we're going home. We've been here for 3 months. So that's the bottom line. It's going to happen. Israel wants to see things settled in Gaza first before it turns its attention to Hezbollah. But the world doesn't want that, folks. The West is gnashing its teeth. The West, because it's very inconvenient in an election year for Joe Biden to have a war in the Middle East, and because the West wants to appease. How dare the West get involved and stand up for its own civilization and for its ally Israel? And we share a common enemy. Nonetheless, they don't want to. That's why they're trying to form this coalition, this working group, whatever it is, trilateral commission between France, the U.S., and Israel. Israel said, nah, take a hike. We're not doing it. Here's what Yoav Gallant said. And God bless him for saying this. He said, as he rejected this proposal from France and the United States, Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, said the following, quote, as we fight, Israel fights a just war, defending our people, France has adopted hostile policies against Israel. And he's right. He continued, in doing so, France ignores the atrocities committed by Hamas against Israeli children, women, and men. Israel, he said, will not be a party to the trilateral framework proposed by France. Mic drop, Yoav Gallant. And I don't blame him. Israel believes that France does not have Israel's best interest at heart. And you know what? He's right. France has thrown Israel under the bus time and again since October 7th, starting with Macron, calling for an immediate ceasefire in November. When Israel was just getting started with the offensive to crush Hamas, France wanted a ceasefire. That would have left Hamas, my gosh, practically completely intact. I mean, just the nerve. So France has been working against Israel's interests throughout. But then you add, and France came back and said, oh, you know, we're upset about this. You're making us seem like we're anti-Semitic. Then Israel's foreign ministry. I talked about the clash between the defense ministry and the foreign ministry. Folks, we need every branch of the Israeli government on the same page right now, needless to say, as a war rages in Gaza, as a war looms with Hezbollah in Lebanon, as Iran looms, a nuclear Iran looms. So the foreign ministry releases a statement, a counter statement after Gallant's, and they say this, we disapprove of Defense Minister Gallant's attacks on France. The statements are incorrect and inappropriate. Oh, really? France took an active role in defending Israel against Iran's drone and missile attack in April. France, and they're praising France and what France has done for Israel. I'm sorry. And then Gallant said, and then Gallant claps back again, folks. Get this. Israel, he said, will not grant France status in deliberations about its security needs in Lebanon. This position is shared by the U.S. and Israel. I don't know about the U.S. But Amos Hochstein, a senior advisor to U.S. President Joe Biden, will arrive in Israel on Monday to try to prevent the recent escalation between Israel and Hezbollah from turning into an all-out war. Folks, this really astounds me. Let me preface it by saying Israel is a sovereign nation. Israelis vote for an Israeli government governed by Israelis. That's the thought here. When the Jewish state was miraculously reborn in 1948, that was the whole idea of it, that the Jewish people once again are in their ancient and ancestral homeland. They're governing themselves. They're defending themselves with a military, the IDF. That's the idea. We are a sovereign nation. We're a member of the body of nations. Harry Truman recognized the nation of Israel May 14th, 1948. Israel is a part of the community of nations. But you wouldn't know that from the behavior of Western leaders and diplomats who lecture and browbeat Israel at every turn. They don't ask, they basically say, Israel, you must do this. And the most notorious culprit there is the foreign policy chief for the European Union, Josep Borrell. He's someone who actually, folks, has talked about his words imposing a Palestinian state on Israel, I guess whether Israel likes it or not. So this is the disdain, the lecturing, the hectoring that Israel is treated with from the so-called international community. And you know what? They're fed up. And France is one of the worst culprits in that, lecturing and Israel war crimes and Israel crimes against humanity and Israel disproportionate force. Enough. These are lies. And it's so foolish and short-sighted of France because these same radical forces have a bullseye on the back of France and every non-Muslim Western nation. I'm talking about the Iranian regime and its axis. But you know what? France has a very large Muslim population that comprises at least 10%. 10%. 1 out of every 10 Frenchmen is Muslim. So is that part of France's thinking? And what do you think? Let me know. Drop a comment there about that. Do you think that Macron and French leaders are factoring in the beliefs and the positions and the views of their large Muslim minority population as they throw Israel under the bus with many public pronouncements? I think it's a factor, no doubt. But just the absolute nerve in Israel, they call it the chutzpah, right? My Israeli friends would say the absolute nerve to lecture a sovereign nation and tell them how to defend themselves. It's bad enough if you're telling them, look, you should run your economy this way. On a cultural issue, you should do this or that. But to tell them how to defend themselves, how best to defend their citizens when they've been butchered and massacred for centuries, the Jewish people, and have faced just war after war, terror campaign after terror campaign since May 14th, 1948, just suffered through October 7th, the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. You're going to tell those people how best to defend themselves? You, France, US, Josep Borrell of the EU, you know better than Israel how Israel should defend itself? What a joke. What an absolute joke. So I don't blame Israel and Yoav Gallant for saying, you know what? Take a hike. We will defend our people the way we see fit. We know what's best for the people of Israel. You don't. You're thousands of miles away, hundreds of miles away. You don't know what's best for us. You don't live in this neighborhood surrounded by forces that want to wipe you off the map. So thank you very much. We'll decide on how we're going to handle Hezbollah. What would France do? What would the Biden administration, what the United States do? What would any nation in the West do if from a neighboring nation there were rockets, missiles, and attack drones in the thousands raining down in their country every day, fired by forces that have openly called for your genocide, your demise? What would France do? What would the US do? What would the UK do? None of them would have put up with it as long as Israel has. And everyone watching this knows that. None of them. Since October 8th, practically every single day for what, 250 days now has it been? Every single day, Hezbollah has fired rockets, missiles, and drones. Every day. They've killed at least 10 civilians, I believe 15 Israeli soldiers. They've made parts of northern Israel uninhabitable. They've got people on the run, living out of suitcases. Folks, listen. I said it the other day, let me repeat. Israel is a tiny nation the size of the state of New Jersey. It cannot afford to have an entire region, the north, and by the way, the south. Look, tens of thousands are still evacuated from their homes in southern Israel near the Gaza border. A nation the size of the state of New Jersey cannot afford to have entire regions inoperable. entire regions not able to produce and help drive the economic engine of that nation. It's unsustainable. This cannot go on much longer. Now, a lot of the talk is that Israel will look to wrap up the Rafah operation in Gaza by the end of June and basically put the nail in Hamas's coffin and turn all its attention to Hezbollah in July. Folks, if things keep going the way they're going and Hezbollah continues to fire at Israel at such a rapid and intense rate, I don't even know if we make it to July before there's a major conflict. And how ironic that the last time Israel and Hezbollah went toe-to-toe was July 2006, 18 years ago. And since that time, Hezbollah has built up its capabilities to at least, it's probably more, but the common number is given as 150,000 rockets and missiles. They fired over 1,000 in the month of May alone, and they're on track to fire even more in the month of June. It must be dealt with. It's unsustainable. You know that, and I know that. We've been talking about this every day. Actually, I've been talking about the first video I did on YouTube about the Great Northern War, if I'm not mistaken, was August 2019. I was talking about this 5 years ago, the coming Great Northern War, long before October 7th, October 8th, because it was obvious that the situation eventually would have to be dealt with Hezbollah. It was obvious 10 years ago, 5 years ago, more than ever now. You can't continue to kick the can down the road. You did that with Hamas, if you're Israel. You thought you established deterrence. Well, then October 7th happened, and the deterrence myth was proven to be exactly that. Hamas was not deterred, nor is Hezbollah. Israel is going to take the lessons of October 7th, I believe, and apply them to the north with Hezbollah. Meaning, Hezbollah may not be long for this world in any sort of sense that they are now. They're a very strong fighting force. But the IDF, and I said this on our premium live stream yesterday, just to reiterate, the IDF, people I talked to in the IDF, ex-officials, current, say, look, the war in Lebanon is going to be nasty, bloody, and it's going to be very harmful for both sides. But when the dust settles, Hezbollah will be in dire straits. Hey, folks, be sure to check out Stakelbeck tonight, my nightly show on TBN. If you love the live streams here on YouTube, you get all the B-roll and maps and graphics everyone's always asking me for, but we don't do it on the live stream because it's kind of down and dirty here on the live stream. I'm just popping up live. But on my nightly show, filmed in this beautiful studio below here in Dallas-Fort Worth, on the nightly show, we've got all the bells and whistles that you could ask for and then some. Every Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on TBN. Folks, do not miss it. We have great guests every night, presidents, prime ministers, experts, and all from a biblical perspective. TBN, or the app, TBN Plus. Check it out every single night, Monday through Friday. Stakelbeck tonight. We just launched in March. We'd love to have you join us every night on that show as well. Hey, great joining you on YouTube. As always, folks, subscribe, help us to get the message out. Have a great and restful weekend. Hey, be at peace. Have shalom, because God Almighty still sits on the throne. And that's why we can get up every day and talk about these issues and come here on YouTube. And you'd rather know than not know. And God is equipping his people, his men, his women, to be watchmen and women on the wall in these Bible times. If we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. Time to be light in the darkness, and remember, God is in control. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.